Thank you for joining me today. I am DFL Chairman Ken Martin, and this is the Chair's Corner. After a successful 2013 legislative session where Governor Dayton and DFL lawmakers made a historic investment in education, made the tax system fair, and passed marriage equality, legislators are back in St. Paul for the 2014 legislative session. DFL legislators will work to build on the momentum of success from the 2013 session and continue to work for fairness and opportunity for all Minnesotans. It's a short session, and legislators need to complete their work by May 19th. But that doesn't mean there's a shortage of work to do. Here today to talk with me about the 2014 session is Senate Majority Leader Tom Bakk. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Pleased to be with you.
Thanks so much for joining us. You know, Minnesota has had great economic news coming out of the state over the last year and a half. There are more jobs in Minnesota now than when Governor Dayton took office. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. And of course, we're one of the top 10 states to do business. We recently received some more good news in terms of the budget surplus, now around $1.2 billion. How does this play into the legislative session, and what are your hopes for what the DFL-led majorities will do with that surplus?
Well, it's certainly good news. We have the fifth fastest growing economy in the nation. And, I've been in kind of a position of deficit management for more than a decade. We've been coming back session after session after session and always managing a crisis. So it certainly feels good for the first time in more than a decade to have our head above water. The challenge that presents is I think there's a presumption, oh my gosh, the state has $1.2 billion. Right. We should send it all back. Or we should spend it all. And the challenge is that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money even around the Capitol. But very small glitches in the state's economy can easily mean $1 billion swing in future revenue. So we're trying to be a little cautious that we don't cut taxes too much or commit too much spending, so that we don't want to find ourselves this time next year back here with managing a deficit again. But there is going to be, I believe, room for some tax reductions. And a small amount of additional new spending that has what we call tails in the next biennium. And I feel pretty strongly that this is a good time to put some additional money into the state's budget reserve.
And I think it should be pointed out that thanks to your strong leadership, Speaker Thiessen's strong leadership, and the governor's strong leadership, we're actually in a position for the first time in many years to actually have a true surplus, not a manufactured surplus, one where we've completely paid off our schools now. And like you said, this is a great problem to have, a glorious headache, so to speak, to be able to be in a position to not have to cut, but be able to figure out how we actually govern responsibly and set the state up. So thank you for your leadership there. You know, the other big priority for DFL this legislative session is passing a strong bonding bill. And what exactly is a bonding bill, and how is it going to help Minnesota grow?
Well, it's always one of the most difficult bills to put together at the legislature. It's one of the things that we deal with in the even-numbered year. In the odd-numbered year, we do a 2-year budget, and then in the even-numbered year, we come back, and there really are 3 things. Potential supplemental budget considerations. In other words, we built a 2-year budget based on forecasted revenue, so we come back in the even-numbered year and see, well, how's revenue coming in compared to how it was forecasted. The second thing that we consider in the election year are constitutional amendments. Will there be something on the ballot for people to vote on in November? And then the third thing is a capital investment bill, bonding bill is commonly referred to, where we actually sell state bonds 20 years in duration to pay for funding of public infrastructure projects. So what you see is projects for our state colleges, universities, roads, bridges, wastewater treatment plants. There are always some projects that look like they're local, but one of the criteria is that they have some kind of a regional significance. So if they benefit more than just a community, they're a kind of a regional asset, they get considered for state bonding. It's a difficult bill to put together, but our Constitution says that we have to have 60% of both bodies of the legislature to pass that. So that means this year in the House, they have to have all the Democrats and 8 Republicans willing to come along and vote for that in order to put the state in debt. In the Senate, we need all the Democrats and 2 Republicans. So it forces people to find some partisan compromise on things, so that in most cases one party can't just run the table and fund only their projects. So it's a pretty interesting process. It's in our Constitution. It's pretty interesting that our forefathers found the importance of trying to find bipartisan agreements on
Right.
things like putting the state in debt.
Right. You know, it's interesting. I come from a family of Republicans, and my dad and uncles have sort of long since left the Republican Party. But my dad used to say that government really shouldn't be involved in all this other stuff. What they should be involved in is funding public safety and funding a good public education, and then building things. And we've seen this modern Republican Party sort of move away from their commitment to doing that, and particularly in investments in infrastructure around the state. I know you travel the state, and I'm sure like me, you hear from regional chambers and other business leaders and mayors and a whole host of folks from all over the state who want to see these critical infrastructure investments happen. What do you say to this Republican Party, or what do you make of this modern Republican Party that's sort of walked away from some of those commitments over the years?
Well, there are some things that are critically important that government has to do, things
Right.
that we can't do for ourselves.
Right.
And certainly, I think probably at the top of the list is public safety. And frankly, we do such a good job of it that I think most people walk out the door in the morning and the family doesn't give any thought to whether their loved ones are going to come home at the end of the day and be safe. Certainly, funding our transportation system is something we can't do by ourselves. We can't plow the road in front of our house and expect that we're going to be able to get to work. So
Right.
transportation is one of those things. One of the things that frustrates me about the Republicans and the idea of bonding, investing in public infrastructure, because there's been quite a bit of resistance to doing that from them, is they often say that, well, bonding and construction, those aren't real jobs. Well, I can tell you as somebody who's drawing a carpenter's pension after 37 years in the union, it's a real job.
That's right.
And just because you don't work on this, go in the same door every day and go to work, because you happen to move from project to project to project, doesn't mean there's not a significant industry there with a whole lot of people who make their livelihood building things.
Right. You know, the other side of that too is, you know, you have these conservatives, fiscal conservatives who complain all the time about the cost of government, and we have record low interest rates, and we could borrow money for a lot cheaper than we ever have, saving taxpayers millions of dollars in construction costs over many years. And it just befuddles me as to why these Republicans wouldn't be for borrowing money at this time to fund these critical projects.
Well, it's the fiscally responsible thing to do.
Right.
Is take out debt when interest rates are low. And this is a good opportunity to do that. We've got a construction industry that really struggled in this deep recession, and they're just starting to come out of it. So the good news for the state is, and for other people that want to build things, is we're getting very, very competitive prices from the construction industry, because they're still really starting to get back on the ground and don't have enough work yet. So they're giving us very competitive pricing. So we're not only have low interest rates, we're getting very competitive bids.
Right. Yeah, Senator Bakk, you've been one of the longest-serving legislators now in St. Paul for 20 years in the House and now in the Senate. But this is the first time you've had the luxury, I guess, of serving under a DFL governor. How have Minnesotans benefited from having DFL governor and majorities in both the House and the Senate, from your perspective?
Well, you know, it's been a remarkable time, and it. You know, for somebody like me coming off of 20 years of nothing but challenges, nothing but a crisis, to finally be in a position where we can invest in what's important. And I heard some Republicans say recently about and I've worked very hard this year to try and say, you know, if we're going to raise the minimum wage, and I support doing that, we need to put some more money into our nursing homes and our residential group homes, our people that work with our most vulnerable citizens. And I've heard Republicans say, well, you know, we wanted to do that too, but we didn't have any money. Well, so nothing was important enough to be willing to raise revenue for.
That's right.
And I think the good news for Minnesota is we now have a governor and a legislature that are willing to raise revenue to do the things that Minnesotans think is important. Taking care of our most vulnerable citizens, all-day kindergarten for every kid in the state, new money for K-12, enough money into the higher education system that we were able to freeze tuition, both at the University of Minnesota and at our Minsk campuses. And we'll find out in the 2014 election how Minnesotans feel. But I think Minnesota's on the right track. Clearly,
Absolutely.
our economy is growing faster than most states. So we're doing some things right. And if you just contrast it with 2 years ago when the Republicans were in control, where property taxes were out of control, the state was abandoning our local units of government and borrowing, historic borrowing from our K-12 schools. Couldn't get done on time, shut government down for 21 days, the longest state government shutdown in state history. That's quite a contrast to this biennium, where we got done on time, we invested in education and higher ed and pre-K, early education, got property taxes actually declined for the first time in more than a decade.
Right.
So I think the governor and the House have an incredible record to run on, and I think Minnesotans are going to respond favorably in November.
Absolutely. As I like to say, it's amazing what happens when you elect people who care about governing. You actually get good government, and I think that is the case. The last session was a remarkable session, one of the most productive we've seen in many years, and historic investments in this state. And you don't have to look much further than to our neighbors in the east and in terms of conservative policies and running the state to see what's happening over there. So I thank you so much, Senator, for your leadership at the Senate and the leadership to this state. I know you travel around the state and you put in a lot of hours serving not only your district but also our party. So thank you so much for being here with me today, Senator Bakk.
Thank you, Ken.
Again, I'd like to thank Senator Tom Bakk, the Senate Majority Leader, for joining me today to talk about the 2014 session and the great things that we'll see from our DFL leaders. It's a great reminder that to keep Minnesota moving forward, we need to get out and vote for the DFL ticket on November 4th. Keep in touch with the DFL by following us on Facebook, Twitter, or visiting our website at www.dfl.org. Thank you again for watching. I'm DFL Chairman Ken Martin, and this has been the Chair's Corner.